Hi, my name is Demika Gilroy, and I'm going to share with you my experiences within the classroom and how they relate to the AITSL, Australian Professional Standards for Teachers. Now, firstly, I would like to explain a little bit about these standards. There are 7 standards provided by AITSL, and these have been further grouped into 3 sections: teaching and learning, professional practice and renewal, and relationships. Teaching and learning is made up of standards 1 to 5, which includes Standard 1, know students and how they learn. 2, know the content and how to teach it. 3, plan for and implement effective teaching and learning. 4, create and maintain supportive and safe learning environments. And Standard 5, assess, provide feedback and report on student learning. Professional practice and renewal includes Standard 6, which is the need to engage in professional learning. And finally, relationships, which is defined by Standard 7, engage professionally with colleagues, parents, carers, and the community. The following poster focuses on the subsections of teaching and learning and relationships, and I will give examples of how these standards have influenced my previous teaching practices. The first example of the application of teaching and learning standards is through the use of an ICT game for early finishers. This example focuses on the use of a game to introduce challenging content to meet the needs of the highest level students, Professional Standard 1.5. The use of ICT within the classroom, Professional Standard 2.6, and using varying teaching strategies to maximize student engagement, which is Standard 4.1. Throughout my classes, there were a few strategies that were constantly being used, such as questioning to promote our higher order thinking and engaging students in problem-solving tasks to help develop and encourage critical thinking skills. A single example of an activity where these standards were all applied well was through the use of an online game called Food Fight. The game was used as a way to challenge fast finishers and requires in-depth knowledge of and application of the food webs to play. The game is 2 players, each assigned an animal, and the students are required to create a single shared food web to ensure that their animal has the highest population. This process requires students to use their understanding of food webs and to create and manipulate a model that would sustain their animal and, if possible, kill off the opposition's animal. The game itself not only challenged students who regularly finished early, but by using a game format, it acted as encouragement for some of the other students to work efficiently and finish early in order to play as a reward. Another aspect of this activity was very useful was that it gave me an opportunity to gain a better read on the level of understandings that the students had in the content. To successfully play the game, the students needed a deep knowledge of food webs, and by questioning the students on their decisions, I was able to receive an obvious insight into this knowledge. When in a chemistry environment, it is often necessary to use experiments to deepen understanding of content and increase student engagement, which is Professional Standard 3.2. The organisation and management of these practicals also require legislation with regards to appropriate and safe practicals within a science lab and appropriate behaviour management techniques to ensure a safe learning environment. Professional Standards 4, which is 4.1 through 4.4, and Standard 7.2. A specific example was when I introduced a calorimetry practical with a Year 11 chemistry class. The content that this practical deals with can seem very abstract to students when only provided in a theoretical form. From previous experience, both as a student teacher and a student myself, I knew that by introducing this lab, I would be enhancing the unit and aiding in student learning. When planning this practical, I needed to complete a risk assessment to ensure that I used the safest materials and procedure possible. This also included discussing with the lab technicians whether this practical was allowed within the high school chemistry lab and what materials I would need. Finally comes the actual practical. When completing a lab in a chemistry environment, there are many instances that students are using chemicals and equipment that include safety risks. Therefore, when dealing with these students at practicum, I had needed to apply my knowledge of behaviour management skills to ensure that all these activities were carried out in a safe manner, both of which were enhanced by the input by my supervising teacher on different techniques that he found useful. When teaching in field experience, I explicitly tried to achieve the standard 2, know the content and how to teach it. In order to do this, I implemented the use of explicit learning of scientific definitions to aid in students' literacy growth. This can be seen as example 3 on the poster. This example focuses on the organisation of content and literacy and numeracy strategies, which comply with 2.2 and 2.5 of Professional Standard 2. When teaching in a classroom, I quickly realised that students often need new terms and applications of language to be taught multiple times before the knowledge began to stick. One strategy I often used was the use of key learning ideas and word revisions and introduction at beginning of each lesson. An explicit example of this was during the time I spent teaching my Year 9 science class. During my 4 weeks of field experience, the students in Year 9 were learning about ecosystems, with major emphasis on the representation of relationships within ecosystems through food webs. Within food webs, there are many essential terms that the students need to understand and apply in order to complete their assessment and gain an overall understanding for the topic. For this reason, I started each lesson that we worked on food webs and the lesson dedicated to the assignment with new key terms and key term revisions. These included words such as producer, consumer, which is first, second, third, etc., decomposer, herbivore, carnivore, and omnivore, although more were added throughout the assignment to address analytical words such as hypothesis. Initially, the activity was teacher-led. However, each lesson I required more and more input from the students to ensure that they were gaining the knowledge adequately. Overall, I found this to be a very successful strategy to address the learning of new language and literacy within the classroom, and an excellent way to adhere to Professional Standard 2. Overall, it can be seen that the AITSL, Australian Professional Standards for Teachers, has greatly influenced my teaching experiences, and there are many instances that can be seen where I use these standards as a framework to build activities, such as through the use of an ICT game and explicit teaching of scientific literacy. Thank you for listening.